We are moving straight on to a case study where we are looking at meeting LNG's growth challenge, attracting talent and ensuring operational excellence in a competitive market. The LNG sector is set for unprecedented growth, and as one of the most safety critical trades, management of safety and competency of crew are paramount. So how can an LNG operator ensure they are able to attract skilled crew, build competence and ensure operational excellence in a competitive market? This case study will explore how CLSICO, I believe it's pronounced, through the announced adoption of Ocean Learning Platform and the use of industry-recognized competencies, has been able to drive a consistent people-first approach to ongoing development, ensuring that CLSICO multinational crew are well prepared to manage new technologies and maintain the highest standards. As CLSICO continues to expand its fleet and enter new markets, Ocean Technology Group has proved a vital partner in providing the tools and expertise needed to, as the company grows, wins new business and bolsters its reputation as a preferred employer in the LNG sector. Please welcome Raal Harris as the Chief Creative Officer at Ocean Technology Group. He will be interviewing John Wood, or discussing with John Wood, who is the Assistant General Manager and Head of Manning and Marine at CLSICO.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you. Am I on? Good morning. No, we're afternoon now, aren't we? Good afternoon, everybody. So a little bit of scene setting. So John and I have known each other for many years as a client and as a friend. And this journey here started, it's the Spinnaker Maritime Manning and Training event in Maritime HR event in London last year. And John started explaining a sort of growth story that his company is on. And that led to some interesting ways in which we're contributing to that story. So I'm going to sort of try and take you through that. First off, just to sort of set the scene really, I think, could we see the presentation slides? I'm not going to walk you through a presentation. You can do your own market research, but it's really about why is LNG an interesting topic for us to be talking about today. And the first thing to say is that it operates to pretty much the highest standards you can get. It's a very safety critical trade. Okay, so we have a lot to learn about safety culture from them. The second is the speed of growth in the sector, and it's expected to grow by about 40% in the next 5 years. That's in terms of what's used. And the other thing to say about it is, it looks like we're not going to get the visuals, unfortunately. But the other thing to say about, no, it's fine. There's nothing on the screen, so I can't push it forward. But the other thing to say about it is that there we go. So if we can go to the graphs and the graphics, it'll give people a sense of scale. It's the amount of that LNG is going to play, the part that it's going to play in the decarbonisation journey. It's a carbon-based fuel, of course, but in terms of that energy transition. And you can see some, I'm not going to walk through the statistics because you can do, as I say, your own research. But it's a massively growing, and it's got a huge part to play in that. And then the last point is, again, with that transition into fuel, is because it's safety critical, I think that it offers a really good blueprint of how we can approach some of these more dangerous fuels like ammonia and things like that. So that's a sort of enough about the background and scene setting, because John's the man we want to hear from today. So John, just to sort of start us off, I was going to ask you about your background, and then I was going to ask you about CLSICO, but actually the two things are so intertwined. If you could just give us a bit of a background for you.
Okay, CLSICO was incorporated in Hong Kong in 2004. We were actually the first Chinese LNG ship management company. In 2008, our first steamship was delivered from a Chinese shipyard. This was actually a project of the China government to basically prove to the world that they could build LNG vessels. At the time of incorporation, China had no LNG experienced seafarers. In fact, they had very little LNG transportation knowledge. So that is one of our kind of mission statements, is to enhance the knowledge of LNG transport in China. In the beginning, shareholders were two major Chinese state-owned companies, COSCO and China Merchants, and a large percentage of this shareholding was BP Shipping. And that's where a lot of the LNG expertise on board and in the office came from. In 2013, BP decided that CLSICO was no longer core business for the BP group, so they sold their shareholding to CNOOC, who is another major Chinese energy company. So we are now fully Chinese owned. As I mentioned, a lot of the senior officers and at the time junior officers on board the ships were from what we call Northwest Europe, parts of Asia like India. The ratings were all Chinese. We were very fortunate that because of the tie-up with BP, in 2004 we started sending Chinese oil tanker guys over to BP LNG carriers. They learned then from the BP seafarers how to operate LNG ships. They then came back to CLSICO when our first ships were delivered in 2008, 2009. They were then additional to the BP guys on board, and over the years, the BP guys have left, they've moved on, the Chinese guys have stayed, and they've climbed up the ladder. At the moment, we had the 6 steamships, now we have a 7th motor ship. Next year, we've got 3 new buildings coming out of China. These will all be XDF motor ships and chartered by Qatar Energy. 2028, we will have 2 more motor ships. These will be QMAX vessels, the very, very large LNG ships. So now is a good time to talk about competence and growth.
Yeah, thanks, John. It's a good scene setting there. And I think it comes across very strongly, that kind of investment and that building of the talent pipeline. But I think you also hit upon something there which I think is interesting, that move to Qatar. Because if you think about like what the bit about that move from that Chinese-only trade to moving to a more worldwide picture, and how that's changed the way in which you're approaching the skills development and the different talent that you've needed to do there, that investment in people, has that changed as you've sort of needed to grow into those new markets?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the 6 steamships, for example, these are chartered by 3 Chinese charterers. 3 ships load in Australia, discharge in China. 2 ships load in Indonesia, discharge in China. And the 6th ship loads in Bintulu, Malaysia, and discharges in China. For want of a better word, these ships are on tram tracks. During COVID, we had slight deviations, not on cargo-wise, but heading into Malaysia and other places to do strange crew changes. But for want of a better word, they're on tram tracks. So with the Qatar project, all the loading will be Ras Laffan in Qatar, but the discharge ports can be anywhere in the world. For the last 16 years, we've been on north-south. All of a sudden, we're going to go east-west. So it's really just a mindset.
Change.
It's just a mindset change.
And have you needed to recruit different nationalities and things as a result of that? Or?
Not so much
Or
nationality,
profiles?
competencies,
Right.
experience, yes. Obviously, the motor ships, these are all XDF. The technology, just the electronicness of these ships is so far advanced from what's on board our steamships. So the people we're talking to now, the people that we're bringing in, the majority of the people we're bringing in are gas engineers and ETOs, based on their XDF reliq experience.
So you talked about like that building up that talent, building up competency being core to that, and I guess it's core to winning the best charters in a sense, having that. What do charterers really want from you in terms of that?
In a word, reliability.
Right.
They like to sleep at night. They like to know that their ships have been handled by competent people, whether that's our officer ashore or our seafarers on board. We have to be able to demonstrate how we achieve those levels of competency.
And that I think is really the key to sort of, what I want to talk about today is like, because you've clearly done, I mean, we've got a global backdrop where there's this real competition for talent. You've got, as you say, more and more technical ships. And that whole sort of changing landscape of kind of bringing those new people in to deal with those differences in trade. How have you gone about building that kind of competence that those charterers want to see?
Like you said in the introduction, you and I go back a long way. We started working together at Videotel. And from Videotel, we basically took CBT, the computer-based training videos. Over the last few years, we've expanded. Now we we always had promotion checklists, but these were paper documents. The problem with these were guys would take them home and forget to bring them to the next ship. So we worked with Ocean Technologies and we digitalized the promotion checklists into a competency management system. Later on, we engaged with you guys, and this was based on basically demonstrating to charterers like Qatar that we were very, very serious about crew competency. All of our officers are now enrolled in the CLSICO LNG cargo handling competency program.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we also work with you guys on the psychometric testing, the APRO, which we find very, very useful.
And one of the things that interested me about that is because it's quite common to do that in pre-employment testing, but you don't use it for that. You use it for
we kind of we use it for team building. I mean, just so everybody's aware, APRO really gives us 3 pieces of vital information. It tells us, or it gives us indication about a person's ability to take in information, a person's ability to process the information they've taken in, and the person's ability to make decisions based on the information they've processed. Some people score very highly in all 3 categories. Some people maybe have a weakness in one. It doesn't detract from their ability to perform, but we share this information with the other members of their senior management team on board. We have a 6-man senior management team. As well as the chief officer, the master, the chief engineer, and the second, we involve the ETO and the gas engineer. We produce a very detailed report following an APRO test. It's about 9 pages long, but we summarize it into a 2-page condensed report. And we actually put that into the seafarer's profile in our crew management software. So when they join the ship, the master, the chief officer, the second engineer, they can read about the guy that's coming. Is he good at taking in information, or do we need to explain in more detail? You know, can he process, or does he need help? Do we have to question and challenge him as he's thinking? This, we find, is the way forward for us.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a time investment, I think, but it's a very interesting one in there. So just to come back, the CLSICO competency guidelines, these are developed by CLSICO, the LNG standards, but they're inside the competency management system. So that's linked, and it's linked direct through to computer-based training content. And this is one of the things, again, that came up in the discussion, John, about how is it working for you, having that combination of the different tools and the sort of, how do they work together in your mind in terms of how they enable the seafarer and that kind of thing?
Over the last few years, I mean, I've been in this business a long time, and I've worked in I've always been involved with crewing, but I've worked in Manila, I've worked in Japan, I've worked in Hong Kong. The one thing I've realized in the last few years, it might sound old-fashioned, but standardization has really become important to me. We do so much work with you guys. Everything is in one place. All the crew's data, their training records and outstanding training, everything is in one place. It's easy to go to. The manning agents have access, the seafarers have access, the master chief engineer have access, they can drive it from the ship. The other thing for things like cargo handling training, now this is a SIA 2.0 requirement. It's now mandatory for all deck officers and gas engineers. They have to have refreshed this training every 5 years. We work with GTT training, nobody else. It doesn't matter if we're training British guys, Dutch guys, Indians, Filipinos, Chinese. We can do some physical training at their training center, but we do most of it online. We do the same thing with our bridge team management, engine team management, and crew resource management. We do it through CAE. Basically, what I'm trying to get to is, regardless of nationality, regardless of experience, I have everybody, hopefully, singing the same song. It's that shared mental model that they refer to in crew resource management. That's the way I'm going, and that works for me. I'm not saying it'll work for everybody, but I would strongly recommend it. The biggest struggle is piecing it all together when you've got these guys been trained this way and these guys been trained that way. If you can do it, bring it together.
And especially if you're doing something in a career-building way, if you're getting people through that sort of rank matrix, you want to know who's ready for promotion, you want to know who you can call on, and succession planning and stuff like that, I would expect.
Yeah. Again, it all I love the digitization of it. I mean, through the crew management software applications that we run, we're able to plan this, we're able to foresee who will be ready. I mean, we have very strict experience requirements, but we can plan that in. So the training kind of connects to that. The mentoring is very important to us. As I say, we have very good retention rates. So a lot of our guys have been with us for a very, very long time, and they're still happy to be sharing their experience and passing it on and developing the next generation.
I mean, that's an interesting thing, because you talked about, I said up front about the war on talent as far as LNG goes, and it's going to get bloodthirsty. I think there's a lot of new builds coming out, and people will be. How do you think that having these kind of systems in place and an approach like yours, it goes to keeping people, attracting people, and keeping people in the business?
I'm not sure if I'd say this or not, but for the new Qatar energy project, obviously with steamships moving to motor ships, we were able to cross-train some people. We were very lucky. Last year, February 23, we took management of a very small motor ship. So it's basically become our training ship. But we have had to recruit. No doubt we've had to recruit. And to date, just in the top 6, I've recruited, I think, 26, what I call non-Chinese, anybody but Chinese nationality, senior officers. I still can't believe it, but we have never placed an advertisement anywhere, online, in the newspapers, locally. When I say we don't have manning agents, for the non-Chinese officers, we kind of do it ourselves, and we partner with Anglo-Eastern because of the time zone. We work with Anglo-Eastern Hong Kong, but we basically work with their office in the UK. Mm-hmm. Anglo-Eastern themselves have never placed an advertisement for us. Everything's been by word of mouth. So people send in CVs. And back in 2022, I recruited one Malaysian chief engineer. He told his friend, who told his friend, who told...
So that kind of...
It's just...
reputation
absolutely.
as a
Unbelievably, yeah.
Employer of choice. And the other thing I'm keen to get across, obviously, as you might expect, is that one of the reasons why we started talking about this is, do you think that the systems that you've put in place, the evidence that you're able to put across, do you think it's enabled you to win the business that you've won and win more business in the future?
The beauty about working with guys like yourself, I mentioned Ocean Technologies, I've mentioned GTT, I've mentioned CAE, and I'll give a plug to Anglo-Eastern because I know my friends are sitting down the front. You're reputable. Obviously, Qatar are a major, major player in the LNG. I think most of the new buildings that you showed on the slide at the beginning, they will be chartered by Qatar. Any new business we tender for, we undergo TMSA audits and things like that. When these guys come in and they start asking about competence and crew training, you mention OTG, you mention OLP. They like to see a few records here and there, but they don't dig any deeper. You're reputable. They know the quality. I mean, Qatar, they have Nakilat. They work with Nakilat. Nakilat probably are a client of yours.
Indeed.
So they know what they're getting.
Yeah.
And they don't go too much further.
Yeah, yeah. Are you standing looking at me
Tommy's
and giving me eyebrows? we got cut short for time, but I don't want to steal a lunch break from you. But yeah, just to kind of wrap up a few little things to think about as we go in there. Do look at LNG, do look at the sector. It's a great sector in terms of the standards that it sets, in terms of competency frameworks like they've got in CICTO are really interesting ones to do it. And that people-first approach, we've heard a lot about that all the way through here. And I think that in the case study we're going to publish, by the way, as well, so you can read it. But what the story there is really that investment in people is going to be the thing that makes the difference to the operators that want to keep that top talent for what is going to be a really exciting and emerging, even growing over the next 5 years. So, John, thank you so much for spending time with us, and thank you all for listening.
The only thing is, I know we didn't have time for questions. I'm available at lunch. I'm here this afternoon. Anybody wants to talk about what we've done and how we've done it and the challenges and the successes, please feel free to get a hold of me. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thank you. Oh, yeah.